Coming soon to a sticky-floored second-run theater near you is a classic tale of good and evil.
La la la, Luke, Luke, I am your father. La lo lo la lo.
Aw, I've interrupted happy time.
Spare Wars.
Hello, YouTube and YouTubettes. This recent Star Wars trilogy, there's been a lot of complaining, and I think there's good reason for that. There's some really good moments and really good scenes, and I think the characters are good characters. I just think they're poorly written. I'm going to give my reasons why I think this this trilogy, 7, 8, and 9, suffered, and what I would do to improve upon it. Now, first of all, I remember 20 years ago when 1, 2, and 3 came out, and there were a lot of people that hated those movies. And, I never understood that. When Phantom Menace came out, there was people lined up around corners for days at theaters, camping out. We didn't really get much of that in this series. Maybe in episode 7, maybe, but not in 8 or 9. It seemed pretty easy to get into the theater for those. But 1, 2, and maybe not 3, but 1 and 2 specifically were, long lines. And it took, sometimes if you didn't get a ticket, it might take weeks to get one. But anyway, a lot of people complained about the prequels, but I thought they were pretty good, But I'm not going to spend much time talking about those. Now, in the new trilogy, what I feel like the weakness of it was storylines for the characters. The new characters, they didn't really give you a reason to care for the most part. There was some things they would give you, but I felt like they should have given more. Like the background of Rey, the background of, how did Kylo Ren get there? It showed moments, and the background of Finn. I mean, you knew he was a stormtrooper, but it didn't really go deeply into that. And then the new characters, it didn't really explain as much how they got there as it should have. Maybe some Star Wars nerds noticed things that I didn't notice. Maybe it's in the writing in the that you read at the very beginning of each Star Wars movie, and I just never remember that. But I would like to know more about, like, for example, why Han Solo and Leia split up. I mean, I think it's probably rooted in Kylo Ren turning to the dark side and all of that, but I would like to know a little more about that. I would like to know more of why Luke is kind of secluded and sort of given up, so to speak. I would like to know more about that. But what I would like to do is kind of go through the characters and present character arcs and stories for each character and how I might present it differently. But I'm also going to try and use those things that were good, that I thought were good in the movies. There's certain scenes that stick out to me. And then there's a lot of new characters that I never really cared about. They never seemed to develop them, But I'm actually going to focus on the characters that there is something there. I'm going to try to develop them a little bit. So first of all, I'm going to start with the old characters that have come back, and I think it was very awesome to have Luke, Han, and Leia, as well as Lando later on. So those are the 4, I believe, that I'm going to be talking about. Was there anybody else? Oh, Chewie. Chewie's the other one. I think that was great. So I'm going to talk about those 4 characters a little bit. Episode 7, I think there was a good story there. I wish that the new characters you might have gotten a little bit more out of. But I'll talk about that when I talk about the newer characters. But episode 7 was mainly Han and Chewie as far as the old characters are concerned. And it was really good to see them as a centerpiece with the Millennium Falcon. I think that was all really cool. And to see them where they were. But like I said, I would have liked to have heard more about why Han and Leia broke up and everything. But regardless, the story of Han in episode 7 was great. And I knew that Harrison Ford wanted his character killed off. In fact, I think that was true in episode 6 as well. But finally, his character got killed off. And I think it was a good way to end his character. A lot of people hated it, but sometimes it happens. I think it was a very emotional scene. The stare-off between him and Kylo Ren, and the reveal that Kylo Ren is his son. And it was emotional because you could tell that Kylo Ren was conflicted. There was conflict. He knew what he had to do, but he didn't know if he had the strength to do it. And then the lightsaber goes off and it kills Han Solo. And people have asked the question. I think it's a good question, and I don't think they really answered the question. But at the end, when Han Solo dies, Kylo Ren was like, "Thank you." Almost as if his father actually pushed the button, Maybe Han Solo was suicidal, maybe he was, just torn by everything that had happened, and he was looking at his son, and he lost his wife. Not literally, she was still alive, but they were no longer together. He had gambling debts maybe, and all that stuff, and he maybe just wanted to end it, and so perhaps he was the one that pushed the button. But anyway, I thought that was a good storyline for those two. Leia was kind of in the background and just leading the rebellion and not doing a whole lot. I have some developments for her. I'm fine with that for episode 7, because you don't want to necessarily put too much emphasis on the old characters when you've got new characters to develop. But Han and Chewie was kind of in more at the center of this storyline. But I think Leia has more to do in my future of her character. Now Chewie, in episode 8, so let's talk about Chewie for a minute. This is my plan for Chewie, and here's just a general thought. I think the old characters should kind of have a build, a center, kind of like a throwback and heroic moment, but they all die off. And I think that would kind of help give them a heroic send-off, but also help build the new characters in a way. And so here's my idea for Chewie. In episode 8, he's on a mission. And his mission is to get revenge for the murder of his best friend, Han Solo. So he first goes and talks to Leia, and Leia understands him, I guess. But they have he wants Leia to have the rebellion go and try and kill Kylo Ren. I mean, he's just angry. He wants to go do it. He wants to go to battle. But Leia says, no, this is not the Jedi way. We're not going to do that. She'll say something like, I loved him just as much, if not more. And I understand how you feel, but, we can't do that. That's not what we do. So he's kind of upset. Chewie's kind of upset about that. So he does recruit some of the rebellion, and some of them go with him. Not a lot, but a few. But obviously that's not going to be enough. So he goes and he finds Lando. And perhaps he already knew where Lando was, but he goes and finds Lando. So yes, Lando appears in episode 8, early in episode 8 somewhere. Now this is not a centerpiece storyline. I'm just talking about Chewie's story. So this is not necessarily the center, any kind of main point of the plot, because he's not a central character. But this is just my idea for him. And so I would like to see Chewie lead a few people from the rebellion that he's recruited and go to Lando and tell Lando what happened to Han Solo and that he wants to get revenge. So Lando agrees to help, and he brings his guys, his army, so to speak, and they go, and what they're trying to do is help Chewie sneak in to a room with Kylo Ren in their ship. This may seem crazy, but if you think about episode 4, A New Hope, you had a few people sneaking around in the starship or whatever that was, the moon space station or whatever, and they're sneaking around there. A lot of it was Han, Luke, and Leia, and Chewie, right? And really the only one that was a Force user at that point was Luke, but I don't even know if he had been trained much yet. So it was really only Obi-Wan. So it's not out of the question for a small crew to sneak in and do something like this. So the plan is that somehow they help Chewie get in a secluded place in a room where he can hide. And that's kind of hard for him, but this is my storyline. So, and Kylo Ren is in a room by himself, and Chewie's hiding, and Kylo doesn't sense him because Chewie's not a Force user. And there's a scene where maybe Kylo Ren is kind of facing towards the camera, but he's doing something, I don't know what. And then behind him, Chewie stands up from behind something and then does a chokehold on Kylo Ren, taking Kylo by surprise. And they have this, this moment where Kylo Ren is choking and he can't breathe. And there's a lightsaber on the other side of the room, and he kind of reaches out, uses the Force, and, takes it and kills Chewbacca. This kind of shows that Chewie is a loyal friend and kind of heroic. I mean, he was able to get up there and try and make amends for what happened to his best friend. But it also is a heroic send-off, I think. Now, meanwhile, Lando and his people get caught, and they get in a little battle, I guess, with stormtroopers and things. And every one of them, with the exception of Lando, gets killed, and Lando is injured, but he escapes. And now Lando goes back to the rebellion, instead of, because he had nowhere to go. Maybe he goes to his old place first, and but the order has beaten him there. I don't know, somewhere, but somehow he gets back to the he reunites with Leia, and he's injured. He comes out, they give him medical help, and Leia's like, I told them not to go, I told Chewie not to do that, I wish he would have listened, whatever. But Lando decides he wants to help the rebellion at this point, so now he's joining them. And maybe he gets killed in a battle heroically, either later in episode 8 or somewhere in episode 9. So now you've kind of got Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Lando's storylines, which is a little bit different than what it was. But now Leia, here's Leia. So what I see with Leia is in episode 7, she's kind of in the background. She's leading the rebellion, but there's other stories to be told, so I don't mind that so much. In episode 8, I would like to see more of her remembering the past, maybe to kind of give you an idea of what's happened, and maybe building her story a little more, memories and things. And in episode 9, and by the way, I liked the scene where she was floating in outer space. That was kind of unique. That was original. And a lot of people had a problem with that, but that's why I liked it, because it was different. But yeah, so I think that I liked that, but I would like to have seen her on a one-on-one duel with a Sith Lord or something. And perhaps episode 9. I know she passed away. That was sad, but I think this would have been a emotional, powerful scene, obviously CGI, and have her have a one-on-one duel with a Sith, a powerful Sith, and I'll get into who that is later. But that's kind of, and then that's where she dies in this battle with a Sith in episode 9. So that's kind of my story arcs for the old characters. Now for the new characters, really the only ones that gave me any reason to care at all, and I know there's more characters, but for some reason they just don't stick in my head. Like, they didn't really give me a reason to care. But the ones that I cared about were Kylo Ren, Rey, and Finn, and Snoke. I cared about Snoke too. I mean, as far as a character, right? I don't like the way they finished it off. But anyway, so let me talk about these characters for a minute. Finn. I think that they had the makings of a good story for him, in the sense that he was a stormtrooper, and then it shows him pulling off his helmet and wondering what's going on. But I think they could have maybe said a little bit more. I wanted to mention that in 4, 5, and 6, Han Solo and Lando, very similar kind of characters. Now Chewie, I guess that there's not much of a story of him or where he came from in those episodes, but he was always with Han. But Han, you knew that he was a swindler. You knew that he was kind of a gambler and had debts and things. He was a kind of a selfish guy, but he also, you kind of notice later that he actually was a good guy too, that he cared about his friends, and deep down he really was a good guy. Lando, the same thing. He was kind of a swindler. You had that story about him making a deal with Vader, right? But then later making amends with his friends and things. So you kind of know enough. It's not that you need to know every detail about those two characters, but you knew enough to care about them, I guess with Chewie, you don't really get much of a storyline of where he came from and all that, but I think he has character that you care about a little more. But that's kind of, even the side characters, you kind of, that were part of the plot, you felt you got enough information to care. So that's the difference in this new one. But with Finn, there's a little bit of a story there, and this is how I would have developed it. Let's say that it's revealed later through memory or through conversation or whatever, that you find out that Finn was a loyal, patriotic person and indoctrinated too, to be a stormtrooper. But he really believed in what he was doing. He believed that the order was good. He was fighting for the good guys, So he just followed orders. And then you see that scene where he takes his helmet off and he's looking around and he's like, what's going on? Like, he sees Kylo Ren want to kill every woman and child around in the village. And that's when he begins to question things. Like, all of a sudden, everything that he was told, everything he believed in was gone. Like, or that it wasn't what he thought. now he realized, wait a second, am I really fighting for good guys? He starts to question things. And so it seems like a small thing, but I think that little story would have given, maybe more reason to care about him. And I wouldn't have, I think I would have made him, there was a heroic scenes with him and stuff, but, little things like that might have made you care a little bit more about him. And he would survive. He's a new character. I would have him be one of the survivors through the end, and maybe, in the last battle, have some heroic moments to get through, but also have some hard times like he did at the end of episode 7. Snoke. So I have a different storyline for Snoke, I guess, than what they had. I don't like the way it went, so to speak. I would have liked to have known more about his background, where he came from. They really didn't give you much of that, and I didn't feel like I cared much. And then once you did, when you feared him, he was immediately, then all of a sudden, without any notice, he was killed. Which I don't mind that. I'm going to use that same storyline because I have different ideas of where it's going to go after that. Kylo Ren, I would have liked to have seen more of his background, how he turned to the dark side, why he turned to the dark side, things like that. In episode 7, so Rey, that's another thing. I would have liked to, the things that she kind of had amnesia and stuff, and I would have liked to have seen her sort of gain memory, like remember her past. And I think in her past, this is my take, because in episode 7 she starts using the Force and not knowing why, but she kind of it's not in her memory, but out of instinct almost. She has it and she's learned it, but she doesn't remember it. And my idea is that these things start coming back slowly, but she starts remembering being trained in the Force. But it doesn't tell you who trained her, but it just shows her being trained and working on it. And then it's revealed who her trainer is. And I'll get to that in a minute. Back to Snoke. One of the background things with him would be, like, why is he so scarred and everything? I think one of the memories should be that Luke, he was in a battle with Luke, and Luke scarred him up pretty good, but it was kind of a draw, and Snoke, escaped, and it could tell you kind of a little background of what happened in that. And also the memories with Luke and Leia, I forgot to mention earlier about him training Leia, I think was really cool. I just wish there would have been a little more of that, just for the sake of giving more background for Leia. Since, so anyway, episode 7, I don't mind the story arcs of those three characters, or Snoke. But episode 8, I really love that battle when Rey is brought in. Now, let me go back to the beginning of 8. So Rey comes, you see Luke on the island. I think that was a great ending to episode 7. And then beginning of 8, where Rey comes in and offers the lightsaber, and she wants him to train him. I don't like the tossing of the lightsaber, but I do like the idea that Luke is reluctant and refuses to train her at first. And the reason is he knows her past, or he senses darkness in her, which it says, he says that later, like, you went straight to the dark, And I think part of the reveal is that she's being trained by the dark side. And it comes out later who that is. But, and so yeah, so he's reluctant, but then he realizes, wait, if I don't tell her, or if I don't train her, she's probably going to eventually remember things and be on the dark side. So maybe her best hope, and even the hope for the Jedi, is to train her. And plus, he thinks he might be able to turn her good. So, so Luke agrees to train her. And as they're training, she begins to remember some things. And she starts to remember certain things she was taught. And she also is trying to get Luke to tell her more about her past. And Luke says, you don't want to know, kind of a thing. Kind of like when Obi-Wan said, Darth Vader betrayed and murdered your father. Which wasn't accurate, but it was kind of true, In this case, Luke might say things like, you don't want to know your past, or kind of not give her the complete truth, because he knows. But she's starting to pick things up, and as it goes. Well, it leads to her being captured and taken in to Kylo Ren and Snoke. And I loved this scene. This is one of the best scenes in the whole trilogy. I would have kept everything the same and have Kylo Ren turn on his master. And what I would like from this point is for Kylo Ren to reach out and ask Rey to join him. And they have that same battle. But the difference is that Rey overcomes Kylo. And during this scene, in fact, before, when Snoke is still alive, she realizes and remembers that Snoke was the one that trained her. So you start seeing memories, and she remembers that Snoke was her trainer. And as she remembers more and more, she becomes more and more powerful, because she remembers how to use the Force. And so when Kylo turns on Snoke and asks her to join him, she fights him, and they suddenly are fighting for the throne, basically, for power. And Rey is victorious, and she sits on the throne. So it's like everything's the same, except at the end of that battle, she sits on the throne. And of course, she remembers that Snoke trained her and stuff. And I think that somehow there has to be a story where the Jedi took her when she was a child and did something to her mind to make her forget, and then just left her in the wilderness, in the desert. Something like that, So the Jedi were responsible for this, and now as she remembers that, now she's angry at the Jedi, she's angry at Luke, she's angry at all of them, and she feels like Snoke was the one that cared about her, and she begins to believe those things. So now she is in charge, because she has the upper hand on Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren sort of escapes, and he's kind of fleeing, and he's disappointed. So that's how 9 picks up. So that scene with Luke, I love that scene, and that's going to happen in 9. But Kylo Ren is angry, he's depressed, he's upset at himself, he's disappointed that he's not on the throne, because that's why he killed Snoke. And now he realizes that Rey is more powerful than him. But he's so angry, he wants to do something about it. So he leads a troop over to the rebellion and begins shooting. And Luke comes out, and just like it happened, and he shoots all the things at him. And Luke is still standing. Kylo Ren goes out there, does the thing, and it turns out Luke is just he's not really there, right? But he gives the others a chance to escape, just like it happened. This is the beginning of 9, though, instead of the end of 8. And but instead of Luke dying, he's exhausted, but he's not dead, because I have more plans for him. But Kylo kind of angry, he's upset, he's depressed, he's kind of a little lost, but eventually comes back to Rey and kneels down and says, I'm here for you, I'll work for you. So now they're both on the dark side, but Kylo is still conflicted. He still has a lot of conflict. Rey seems to have embraced the dark side more. And so this leads to, I guess the end would be the epic battle. But I kind of, I don't mind them bringing Palpatine back kind of on life support. But if you do, I would have liked to have seen Mace Windu on life support too. Something like that, and do something with that. But Rey is the main villain at this point. And so this leads to a battle, a final battle. But I see Leia as a main part. And this is where she's going to have her big epic one-on-one. And it's going to be with Rey. And it's going to be this great CGI, fast-paced, awesome one-on-one battle between Rey and Leia. Meanwhile, Luke and Kylo are going to have their one-on-one battle. And also all the other characters, Finn and the others, are going to be fighting as well. And maybe this is where Lando dies, maybe that's the battle, or maybe earlier in Episode 9. He dies an heroic death to save the others, But I would like to see, Luke and Kylo have a duel. Kylo's still conflicted, but it's sort of like Episode 5, where Darth Vader is sort of messing with Luke. He's trying to get Luke to convert, and Darth Vader is more powerful, so he's trying to seduce Luke. He doesn't kill Luke. He could have easily, but he doesn't. And Luke gets away only because Darth let him, but it was because he was trying to recruit him. Well, in this case, Luke is trying to turn Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is sort of struggling. He's kind of conflicted, but he's saying no, and they have this battle. And so let's say that Kylo gets the upper hand, but he can't get himself to kill Luke. And you kind of have that moment where he's sort of turning, he's sort of unsure, and he still can't quite do it, right? Meanwhile, you have, Rey and Leia with their fight, and Kylo notices them. And then he sees Rey kill Leia in this epic battle. And Kylo Ren somehow has feelings like, that's my mother, like that good side of him is coming out. And so he drops his weapon and starts crying, and he hugs Luke. So now you got Rey, this powerful Sith, and you got Luke that's kind of wounded, and Kylo. And now they come up and they're going to face Rey. And in this battle, Rey is able to kill Luke, but Kylo Ren is victorious. So what do you think of that? I just think it kind of gives, and all the other characters, Finn and the other side characters, that I would like to see them developed more, and for them to have a reason for you to care about them. But they have they're heroes in the final battle and things. But in the journey, there's a lot of hardships, and a lot of that is all of the old characters getting killed off. So, and maybe one of the new characters gets killed off too, just kind of give you more emotion about it and more of a hard time about it. So, in the end of this one, Kylo Ren is the one that's victorious. He's the one that turns good and becomes the hero. So it's kind of like a strange thing, because most of it he's the villain. That's how it starts, and then all of a sudden he's the good guy. Rey starts out as the good person and eventually turns to the dark side. So what do you think of that? That's kind of my idea, and I think it works pretty well. So tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
It's Spare Wars.
May the force be with you.
Sparing you to death at a theater near you.